Perceived isolation over the course of your life can be the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and can shorten your life by up to 15 years. Every networking event has a live band, and I'm like, why? We're here to talk. You can't just assume that extroverts are the best networkers. They're not. Introverts are the best networkers because they're the best listeners. You're not like selling yourself. You're just being yourself and attracting the people who want to work with you. And the people that are for you are like, yes, you're great. I love you. I want to work with you. And the people who don't.
Welcome to the Cincinnati Business Podcast, where we give you practical tips and tricks to grow yourself and your business. And brought to you by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. So, Amy P. Vaughan.
Thanks for using the
creative, entrepreneur, leader, marketer. Man, purchased a company. You've been described as a introverted extrovert and now author. Man,
working on it.
What drives you?
Everything, clearly.
Apparently.
I mean, for me, it's, through the evolution of my career and my experience, the thing that I always come back to is people, the culture, and then the work that we get to create. And I really believe that the space we create for others, whether that's physically, psychologically, is what leads to amazing work, ideas, and philosophies. And so kind of everything you just mentioned kind of all ties into that. So while it might seem like it's a little all over the place, I think maybe it's my ADD brain. I can definitely see and know all the connections, but then I know the history of my experience too. So
that makes sense. So, I mean, I'm curious. You're quoted as saying that you wanted to go into med school when you were going into college.
You dug deep. I love it.
I tried.
I
tried.
It.
Thanks, ChatGPT. And then you said, no, that's not for me. What kind of made you realize that there was a different path you needed to head?
For me, there's a lot about healthcare that I loved. You're helping people, which I love to do. And, it looks good. I'm a first generation kid. My dad's from Egypt. So when you're a first generation kid, sometimes the expectations are just a bit higher. I had a cousin who's a doctor. I have a cousin who got like an Emmy, like all these different things, right? Physicians and lawyers and whatnot. And so part of it was that, but part of it was definitely wanting to help others. What made me realize it wasn't for me was that there was just a lot about the systems that felt broken. I worked in nursing homes, hospitals, physicians' offices, and, I got to meet and work with a lot of incredible people and see a lot of amazing, but also hard things. But yeah, I kind of just knew even in my 20s that it wasn't quite for me. And I was actually working at a pharmaceutical research company, taking down and transcribing notes about this certain medication called Oxycontin. This is in like the early 2000s. Yeah.
Oh, Dope Thief was made about you then, apparently.
No. I was just doing the investigating. I wasn't doing the dosing. But anyways, that really opened my eyes to just kind of wanting to get out even more. I just kind of had that ick. But while I was there, the chief marketing officer had noticed some of the work that I had done around the office. And she says, "You're a great writer. You are really creative. Would you make a logo for me for this? What is it? Gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, for
what
kids."
A name.
Right. And so I got to, this is so bad too. I got to make a logo, and it was this kid on a skateboard ramping up the word GERD. It was very creative. I still can close my eyes and see it. And the most amazing thing was when the whole gimmick was they would put these in the doctor's offices with candy in it to attract the kids, that they would be excited about the candy, and mom would see GERD. Oh, my kid has reflux disease. We could be a part of this research study, and then they can get medication to maybe help with that. But for me, it was seeing a logo, something I created on a jar that was going to go out into the world that that other people were going to see. And not only that, but it was helping solve a problem. Right? They needed to be able to find ways to safely distribute the medication to help kids with the reflux disease. And yeah, I was like, oh, you don't have to be just creative for creative's sake, which is great. I can actually be creative and solve problems. And that really kind of that's what clicked for me. And so I was like, okay, I had taken a almost 2-year break, like a gap, 2 years, and decided I was going back to school for advertising and design. And so I worked full time at a graphic design firm, managing the office, and went to school at night for 3 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Dedication. Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I've been working since I was 16. Again, I think it's like that kind of second generation type of thing, very hardworking, very focused on the job. My siblings are all very much the same. We're like workaholics, not anonymous is who we are.
Not anonymous anymore. No. You've been making quite the splash in Cincinnati recently. Yeah. So then I'm curious, that probably wasn't the first moment that you recognized that you were a creative.
No.
What was kind of that for you?
As a kid. Right off the bat, when I was a kid, I loved art class. I loved creating. I loved making things. And it was interesting because it wasn't ever like one particular craft, art, or medium. Like even as at 8 years old, I was forming clubs and groups for the neighborhood kids that they could feel like they were belonging. And I was a huge nerd and fan about the Planeteers. I wanted to save the planet. So we had a Planeteers club and we would clean up trash in our neighborhood. Like anything I could do to bring people together to make something positive happen, whether that was by being creative or doing something creative or creating something, that was kind of the way that I was as a kid from the ages of 5 until, 12 or 13.
And so then after you do that time in night school, I think if I remember correctly, you start hopping right into the world of branding and digital, right?
Yep. Yeah, I had a couple of really great opportunities to intern at some agencies in Chicago. And then we kind of took a little bit of a pivot. I had gotten married and my husband got a opportunity to do a postdoc at Oxford University in England. So kind of hard to say no to that. And so I had the chance to sort of, maybe not so willingly, but pump the brakes and go to England, live. And I did some freelance contract work. And one of those pieces of work ended up being for a small family-owned coffee shop. And I remember I kept trying to find more clients and other agencies to work for. And I'd kind of chosen the path of copy versus design, because back then you were either art or copy, right? And so I chose copy, and I get to England and they say, you don't speak British, you speak American. And I thought, I don't think you can say that, right? Like, is that legal? And so it was hard. And I started doing some design work for this family, and I did their logo, I did their boards, I did their website, I did their social. And after I ran out of things to design, I was like, I need money to pay these student loans. What do I do now? And the daughter of the business was like, learn to make coffee. I was like, oh, I have a college degree. Me make coffee? And, you have to make choices and sacrifices. And as I was like not having as many clients and finding no agency work, because in Oxford, it's very much Oxford, the city is the university. There were no agencies. You'd have to schlep it all the way to London every day to do that. And so, what was interesting was it made me take a step back at a time when I had worked so hard through school and then got these really highly visible, amazing internships and some job offers before we left to actually kind of check myself and take a breath and become a barista, do some freelance work on the side, and just live while I was in England instead of work the whole time I was in England. Yeah. And that was a big part of kind of how I began to identify myself as a worker and sort of maybe reform the workaholism a little bit. It's easy to fall back into it because there, in a lot of other countries outside of the United States, we don't ask somebody the first time we meet them, what do you do for a living? We say, where have you traveled lately? What part of town are you from? How is your family? Like those kinds of questions are the measure of a person's worth. Where here in the States, we're like, what do you do for a living? That's how I know what to think of you.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely capitalist. And so it was definitely a good culture shift for me. It was like a not an expected sort of break, but it didn't break my career because we stayed there for 2 years. And then as soon as we moved back stateside, I was working at Team Detroit on Ford as a copywriter. And before I left that agency, within a year, I had this amazing opportunity to write and direct a commercial for ESPN with Ken Block, former rally race car driver.
I love Ken Block.
Gymkhana. Yeah, he's an amazing dude. Oh. It was a lot of fun to shoot. I mean, and I was really lucky because I had an associate creative director at the time who was like this close to retirement. And so when we were working on the script and we're pitching the idea and it came time to the shoot, usually you just hand it off to your creative director and you just say, good luck, enjoy the shoot. And he's like, go, you do it. You got this. And so here I am, copywriter, 1 year of like full on agency experience. And I got that. So I'm forever thankful that Randy gave me the opportunity. And then we ended up back here in Cincinnati, kind of where we started, my husband and I. He got a job at the University of Cincinnati. And I started working on Cincinnati P&G brands.
Yes.
Gillette, Olay, CoverGirl, Pantene, and then eventually to like Folgers for a little bit as well. A lot of pitch work and things like that. But yeah.
Hey, welcome to the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. We built this studio for creators like you. So whether you're just starting out or you've been producing episodes for a while, our mission is to help make podcasting easy and enjoyable. This is where the magic happens.
We've got the space, the equipment,
a shower for some reason,
and the production help you need so that you can focus on your content. Whether you're in studio or recording remotely, we'll make sure everything looks and sounds professional.
Finally ready to start that podcast? Let's make something great.
There's another thing you said in another interview, that you found yourself to be the only woman in the room sometimes.
Yeah.
Where did you land? Like, how did you start to land these more leadership roles as you were going?
I think as a lot of women have to, you move on. It sucks to say. I had been working at an agency, at the capacity of an associate creative director, but my title was still copywriter. And I remember at the time, my boss, Jeff Stamp, holla Jeff, if you're listening, he's amazing. Another just great ally and champion. I was getting introduced on client calls as the creative director. I was pitching to Pringles global brand manager in Geneva, and I was still being paid $40,000 a year and a copywriter. And so Jeff came to me one day and he's like, here you go, and hands me a piece of paper. And I'm like, what's this? He's like, it's your promotion. Finally, thanks. And I saw copy director and I'm like, that's the title I wanted. And I didn't even look at the salary. I was just ready to sign. And he says, stop. And I said, well, why? He's like, you're going to go back and ask for more money. That's why. And I just never, ever would have thought to do that. So Jeff really was another big, fantastic ally, champion. I think the thing about women is that we don't, and the research that I've been doing for my book that I know we're going to discuss, is that women don't rise through the ranks by being put in positions of leadership right away, by leading projects. They actually are seen as dominating or aggressive in a lot of the research they find. They don't actually get leadership positions by spending more time with leaders, because the leaders aren't often actually the same type of folks that they are. It can cause more friction and more challenges. It is third-party referral. It is people speaking your name in the rooms that you're not in. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that really came to fruition. And this is a crazy story, full circle moment. So I started in Chicago, right? I was interviewing for jobs while my husband was getting postdoc opportunity in Oxford. One of those interviews that I had was a temp to hire job. I thought it was just a temp job at Leo Burnett. So anybody that knows agencies and knows Chicago, Leo Burnett is it. So to be in those spaces, to get that interview was huge. And I was meeting with this guy, Mike Pugh, and he says, you're great. I want you to know this is a temp to hire job, and I think you're the one for it. And I wanted to cry. I'm like, I'm moving to England. I'll be back in 2 years. Can you hold the place? Like, no, obviously you can't. But made an impression on Mike, left and went to England, came back and was at the agency in Detroit, did all that work with Ford. And the reason I got the opportunity on the shoot, the video with Ken Block, was because I had found ways to optimize search copywriting through some process and just basically mild programming and Excel spreadsheet formulas to kind of customize and localize all my copy, so I wasn't just copy pasting all day. And so I had all this time, and I'm like, I have time. What can I help with? And they're like, try writing a script for this commercial. And so that, me creating a better process and a better way to do the creative, got the eye of their head of strategy, who then came to me and was like, do you want a job in strategy? And then I had this whole identity crisis. I'm like, am I creative? Am I a strategist? I don't know. And I called like the dean of my college, and she was like a great coach, and she's like, visualize the path. And I'm like, I don't got to visualize. I know I'm creative. I am a strategic creative, but I know I want to stay the course of creative. And so that was John. So I had Mike, I had John, and then fast forward a few years later, and I'm at this other agency. I'm not getting the money I should be getting, but I'm getting the phone promotions. And this guy pops out of the blue in my LinkedIn and offers me an associate creative director role working on Cow Brands, which is like Jergens, Biore, Ban Curel, about $4 million worth of business as an associate creative director at twice my salary.
Whoa.
Because he knew Mike Pugh and they worked together. He knew John, and one of my college professors was his partner on both the Army and McDonald's account. And he was like a mentor and advisor to me. So like those connections and those guys, all JT had to do was say, hey, you know Amy, you know Amy, you know Amy. What do we think? That's enough for me to go, that's the person I want. And literally just came to me with a job offer. And just for formality's sake, I had to come and interview with the rest of the agency. And that luckily all worked out. And I was there for 2 years and got to do a lot of amazing work. But it is absolutely, I mean, talent is a big part. Drive is a big part of what makes you successful in the industry and anything, I guess, that you try to do. But at the end of the day, like there's got to be some credit that goes to the relationships you build and the people that know you and trust you and the work that you do.
Well, I think you were quoted at one point, if I read the quote correctly, it says 70% of jobs never get listed and almost 80% of the jobs are hired on a referral.
100%.
And that's kind of the space you found yourself in.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think in this current job market for this particular industry and for women, especially women going into middle age as well, it's a hard market. You know, companies are sitting on their cash because they're not certain about the economy. Everything since COVID's been rough. And so they're like building their benches. Sometimes they're posting jobs that aren't even actual jobs. I'm hearing from our job seekers. So it's like, you can't even trust the ones that are out there.
Weird.
And then when it comes to people who are on the hiring end, I feel for them as well. The job market's flooded. There's more competition than ever. They're having to meet the needs of hybrid and remote and people who want California salaries while living in Ohio. And so there's this whole new dynamic to the workforce. And so, yeah, referrals are more important than ever. And so if you are looking for a job and you're not networking, you're not looking for a job. You're just applying for jobs.
And some of this passion that you have started to realize, did that really come together when you took over and purchased Together Digital?
Yeah, that came at such a critical time. To go back to your mention about feeling alone in the room, you know, it was kind of great. I was a little spoiled when I went to work for JT. There was one other female creative director. So of an agency of 100 people, 2 female creative directors. Whoa. I came back to Cincinnati, went to an agency of 200, and I was one of 2 women out of 7 or 8 creative directors. And so, you know, and I would go on shoots and on sets, and it's all guys, you know, and it was great. Honestly, like I've always gotten along with dudes. Like I was such a tomboy growing up. It was never really a problem for me until I started having a family and I had to go pump. And I'm on set and I'm like, yo, guys, where does a girl go to have some privacy here? And then how do I also bring it up without freaking you all out? But luckily, a lot of the guys I worked with, we were cool. So we could just roll with it. And then also, you know, as you move up through the ranks, there's a lot of research behind the likability penalty of women, even amongst other women. As women gain more authority and leadership, there's that double-edged sword of they're just honestly liked less. People are either threatened by them, are concerned about them, or, you know, for women, I think a lot of it has to do with it's that scarcity mindset. There's only one woman at the top. There's only 3% of C-suites out of the Fortune 500 companies that are out there are women. So when there's only that few seats, there's only room for so many. And so it creates this very unnecessary competition, even among women, to get up there. And so, yeah, I mean, it got to a point when I was a creative director, I got my title, I got my salary, I had my family, and I just realized then I'm like not in a good place. Like I'm at what's supposed to be the pinnacle, the peak of my career, and I'm miserable. I'm traveling all the time. I'm anxious. I'm sick. I'm worried. I'm not near my children and my babies. And it's like, you know, and I love my work, but it's like that balance of ambition and family and, you know, the mom guilt, everything that comes with it. It was just a lot. And I had nobody to turn to in the office, nobody else to turn to, except for, it was hard, my boss's boss, who was a woman and amazing. and a really good mentor as well. But she was all the way in Seattle, and I talked to her once a month. So it wasn't like you could just kind of go into a huddle and be like, So I really started to learn that the necessity for peers as mentors was really important. And that's when the founder of Together Digital found me again on LinkedIn and reached out and said, I'm starting this group. I was sexually harassed at the workplace. My boss took me out for dinner and told me, or lunch, and told me he didn't know what would happen if we were alone in a room together. And when she tried to go back to address it with HR, they just dismissed her by putting her out, saying, we're just going to put you on another team. And she's like, that's not the fix. And it just kind of kept happening. And then she just was like, screw it, I'm going to start my own agency. She started her agency and just kind of kept seeing a lot of the same tendencies where she actually noticed, like she was into the data, that her win rates for new clients improved when she brought a man into the room. That when she would bring a man into the room as the agency leader, she might have a bunch of guys with her. And in the meeting room, everybody's attention would be directed at the guys. They just assumed the guy was the leader. And she was over there going, hi, I'm the CEO of this agency. Nice to meet you. Because that assumption, it's so hard to be that only. And I mean, I think we've all felt that at some point in our lives. It doesn't matter who you are. And we know it, we don't like how it feels. And so for me, Together Digital was just this really amazing godsend at the right time in the right place in my life where I was trying to balance motherhood and ambition. I want to be both mom, to talk about mom stuff, but then I also want to talk to people who know what working through and working with clients is like, and projects and timelines and meetings and all of that. And so it was this really cool thing where I felt like for once I can walk into a room and show up as my whole self and have the vulnerable conversation. So I absolutely fell in love with the community very quickly. Got very involved, volunteered for 2.5 years as the board president. And then kind of started to fall back into my like operational modes when I was like a kid going to college, right? Running that office.
Yeah.
I learned so much about how to run a business while I was going to school for advertising. I like created a new process for the board, used our lovely entrepreneur operating systems.
Traction sitting
for that.
right there.
I love
Yes.
it. I love it. I still use it for all of my businesses now. And so, it really brought for me to light my desire to, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've been tapping into my creative skill sets, but the building community and connection plus creating systems that allow for that with the process, that's where I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
And I think she saw that too. So when she was called upon by a member to go run for Congress, which is something she never saw herself doing, decided to go do that. And I said, that's amazing. What about this? Like, we still need this community and this mission. And, this was in 2019. She's like, you run it. You want to run a business? I told a boss once that I was like, I would love to run. They were asking like, where do you see yourself eventually? 3-5 years? Running a company. They laughed. It's like, creatives can't run companies. No. But that's sweet. That's cute. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And then I got to go back to that person and be like, hey, here's my notice. I'm going to go run a company now.
That must have felt good.
It did. It was just wild because, again, it's one of those things. I think when you start to notice what lights you up, like just keep moving towards that, and then what you start to find is like, again, what is it they say, where your attention goes, energy flows, and opportunities arise. And so that's just kind of been the name of the game for me ever since then. It's like I don't have one big grand scheme or plan. It's just, for me, it's more about understanding and knowing my values and what I have to contribute and the difference I want to make in the world. And then saying, when I have that gut feeling that this is a go, I'm just going to go. Like, I'm not going to wait for permission. I don't need to.
Yeah.
Just going to go figure it out.
And so for those who don't know, Together Digital helps women do exactly that.
Yeah.
And so you found that the things that you were feeling is now what you get to do every day and empower women to say, hey, let's make more money. Let's figure out how to go to the job interview and actually impress and like say, no, this makes way more sense to hire her.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting. One of my favorite stories from the community is we do this ask and give exchange. For women, it's hard to ask. I think it's hard for men too, to be honest, though. It's hard to ask for help, period, full stop, right? But women don't often ask for it. And it's not just asking for it, but it's even receiving it. And so we just ask, give, exchange, which allows them to ask for what they need, no guilt, no shame, and to give without any judgment. And when in that practice, it helps build that muscle of just really getting used to looking up, looking around and saying, I have connections, I have support. Who can I ask for help? And so we do this within our Slack online community, at our events, within our peer groups. And one woman had stood up and said, hi, I went to college with a guy and same class, graduating class, same university, same degree, left and started at the same agency, basically the same week. And I happened to overhear that he was making more than me, but I didn't want to believe it. And so and so she asked the group, like, what do I do? And somebody had given her kind of some language to help really have the conversation because they worked in HR and they're like, yeah, this is a sensitive thing. But also pay transparency is a necessity. And this was like actually before pay transparency was even really a conversation yet. And she says, you need to ask your boss, are we practicing pay equity? And she's like, okay. And she's like, that way you're just making a blanket question about basically equal pay and not in a way that's coming at anybody. And you're not pointing fingers at he's making more than me, or I heard this about her, and like none of that. And so that's what she did. And the boss said, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll check it out and come back to you. She got a $60,000 a year raise.
Whoa.
Not 16, 60000. $60,000. That's how much less she was getting paid.
Whoa.
For the same level of experience, same degree, basically the same job, just different accounts.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's wild. And so that's the thing too. It's like with the learning to ask, the next step outside of asking for help is asking for the no. You know, a lot of women don't negotiate when it comes to looking for jobs. A lot of women don't apply for jobs unless they're 110% qualified, whereas men will apply when they're 50, 60% qualified. And then also men will tend to get more hired on potential versus checking all the boxes. And so there's just like a lot of confluencing factors that when you are in the workforce and, I don't know many people that can afford to have a single income household anymore. When both parents need to be working, it's definitely one of those things where, it's a different kind of uphill battle. I mean, we all have our uphill battles, but it's definitely a bumpy one. And without the awareness, without the conversations, without women having the right language to step up and talk about what they need to talk about and say it in a way that isn't going to come back and bite them in the butt, but then also to help educate men and other allies to see where the discrepancies are and say, yeah, like, look at this. Why do I have this female employee on my team who gets paid this and the guy who gets paid this? Like, I think they're both doing a great job. It should be, let's just make it equal.
Yeah.
Not hard.
Yeah. But it takes intentionality.
Yep.
And if there's anything that we've learned over the years is that there are a lot of bad managers out there.
Yeah. Right. People don't quit bad jobs. They quit bad managers.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so when you're in this role now, is that what kind of sparked the understanding of this issue that you started to call the networking gap?
Honestly, I think the networking gap actually came about after the pandemic when I decided to get out of the house and back into the world with everyone else a little bit. Because being an entrepreneur is also a lonely endeavor and isolating. Even when it's a community, I decided to do the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, which really just opened up my eyes and opportunity to see more entrepreneurs in areas outside of my own, people outside of digital marketing and advertising. And in just those 14 weeks that I was there with those folks, I just really took note of how unconnected the women were. And the men's businesses were, really thriving. And the women who were succeeding were definitely the ones that leaned heavy and hard on relationship. And so it was kind of, I think then, and then also just, definitely observing our Together Digital members. I mean, I think we all find networking awkward. We love to build relationships. We like making friends feels good. Networking feels gross because it's transactional. It's a what's in it for me. And so I think after 6 years of experiencing in-person and virtual networking on all levels and basically doing it for 6 solid years, it just really for me helped see from a 30,000 foot view where the pitfalls were for a lot of us in networking, and why, for, I would say, women, minorities, folks who are neurodivergent, introverts, things like that, omniverts, ambiverts, all those types. It's a struggle. And there's a lot about it. Again, it comes back to the systems and the space we create. It wasn't built with us in mind, right? Networking was created when the book was How to Influence People and Win Friends. Because that's what we do. We win people, right? Because we're prizes to be won. No. And that book is still like out there and circulating, and they keep updating it. But it was written in 1939 by Dale Carnegie, when there were just men in the workforce, and they were wearing suits, and they were going to the bars, and they were going to the golf clubs, and it was just a different time. And the workforce has evolved and changed, but a lot of the ways in which we try to set up networking haven't.
So then, I know that we don't even have a launch date yet for the book, from my understanding. I think
more work came along.
Yes. And I believe that you're working together with Forbes Books to be able to pull this together.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're learning through them, through your process, your research, that is how we should change networking?
Yeah.
How should networking look different?
Well, I mean, the way that I've structured the book is it's almost like a field guide, because I like actionable things. I'm a copywriter by trade, which means I like headlines and I like bullet points, which kind of was an issue for the publisher. They're like, no, we want words in a book. I was like, what if we compromise and make the first half about like why the system's broken, why we need to learn to network from the inside out first versus just trying to put ourselves out there without knowing ourselves. And then we can talk about the systems that are broken and the ways in which we can change the space and create more meaningful connections intentionally in networking. And then we'll have a field guide where it's like you digging in to learn your values, who you are as a person, so that when you go out into the world, you're not like selling yourself, you're just being yourself and attracting the people who want to work with you. And so then you just get to show up and not pretend and be you. And the people that are for you are like, yes, you're great. I love you. I want to work with you. And the people who don't. And you still find success because there's always going to be people who, when you're relating or relatable, will see you and say, I see myself in that, a little bit of that. And that makes me want to trust you and work with you or belong to where the spaces that you're belonging, and it's just this really awesome, very liberating thing. Because I think most of us spend a lot of our lives trying to be things that we're not. And so a lot of me and my friends that are over 40 love to talk about like this whole being invisible after 40 is kind of great because like you're not young and 20 something and looking great and you're just running around trying to get by and people don't notice. And for the first time, it's like, I don't have to work for the attention and I don't care about the attention. I can just be me. And there's just something really, really freeing about that. And I think I took that insight and I'm like, that really can work for anybody. I don't care who you are, but I think that there's this ability to be magnetic when you are being your most truthful and authentic self. And I think we struggle because I think we think there's, and with the book, I really try to help guide people versus say, this is exactly what you have to do. This is exactly the answer because it's not. It's a process, right? And so that's kind of what the book is really about, pointing out the pain points, not just to trigger women necessarily, but to also help educate. So there's like ally actions within each of the sections. So like, as you're reading this, you might not think that going to a bar for a happy hour is a bad idea. But if you are a young single woman who has to walk through a dark alley where there's a lot of people drinking, that feels dangerous potentially.
I don't feel safe in those environments, so I can't imagine what she would feel in that moment.
If you are not quite, like if you're not able-bodied or if you're hard of hearing and you're in a noisy, loud, every networking event has a live band and I'm like, why? We're here to talk. Like that would be like coming into a podcast studio and blaring, like, let's bring a live band here and play while we're talking and try to make that meaningful conversations. No. It's very, when you start to think about it, it's so not logical. And then you can't unsee it. Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You can't unsee it.
So we started this conversation with you saying, most of the jobs in the world are never posted. They're never listed.
Yeah.
And it was because of connections that you had that eventually landed you with some of the really cool opportunities that you had. So say I am an introvert and I'm in this space where I'm told networking is the play. I need to know people so that I can get the job that I want to get. And I encounter those sort of people in my networking events all the time. What are the suggestions you give them so that they can have those connections and eventually find that role?
So introvertedness and extrovertedness, omnivore, ambivert, it's all about energy, right? For all of us, we either give energy, we receive energy, we project energy, and certain things fill us up and certain things deplete us, right? So extroverts, we get excited about talking with people. We can be in a room and we're getting energy. With introverts, that all depletes you. And so my advice is that, networking and getting to know people is critical for finding success, opportunity, friendships, like things that are more meaningful than just your paycheck. But at the end of the day, you just have to watch your battery. And so as somebody who's, a little bit of an ambivert, which means I'm introverted, extroverted, I acknowledge that I can go so long with being extroverted, but I have to really listen to my body and my brain and note when it's time to take a break. And I didn't really realize this until after I had my kids. And I just assumed it was like hormones and missing family. But I was like, no, actually, after a while, I need to take a moment. And so, I'd go to a conference and I would, get a hotel really close by if I could so that I could take breaks throughout the day and just kind of be in quiet and stare at the ceiling and recharge. Because at the end of the day, even in my book, I caution extroverts because we're trying to push out so much energy that we're not being aware of what that's doing to the people around us. So you can't just assume that extroverts are the best networkers. They're not. I hate to say it, but they're not. Introverts are the best networkers because they're the best listeners. They're the best listeners. And they usually have the best questions. And that's another great trick. As an introvert, honestly, I feel like a lot of podcast hosts are self-proclaimed introverts because you get to ask the questions and listen to them talk. And what do people love to do? Talk about themselves. So at the end of the day, I think introverts are probably some of the most powerful networkers out there. There's a really great book out. It's been out for a while by Susan Cain. You should add it to the bookshelf, called Quiet. It was like something about I wish I could remember the subtitle. It's like the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking or that can't shut up or something funny like that.
That's a great subtitle.
And some of the world's most impressive and impactful leaders were introverts. I think we just give a lot of credit to extroverts because they're out there and they're loud doing what they're doing.
They're visible.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But just because you're the loudest in the room doesn't make you the smartest. And doesn't really make you the best at doing whatever the objective might be in that space. So, yeah.
And if there was one strategy for the person who finds those extroverted moments to be incredibly draining, what's the one piece of advice you can give them to give them strength in that moment?
Yeah, it's preparation. I would say, if you can swing it, come a little late, take an hour and do something that fills you up. Whether that's one-on-one time with a friend, you warm up over coffee, or you just go and stare at a wall, meditate, journal. Don't work. We have, again, this is the tendency, right? With networking, we rush. And then we try to leave the office and you're trying to close out emails, then you're answering phone calls, then you're on your way there and you're stressed. You have just depleted all the energy you have. So make plans, know where you're going, a couple days before, map out the space, maybe even drive by and see where am I going to park? How am I going to get there? Put a hard stop on your calendar, have those boundaries, give yourself an hour even before the event. And just that way, when you come in, your nervous system, you're just good. You're good because you feel prepared. You feel ready. I'm not saying you're not going to walk in not feeling anxious, but 2 other tricks I like are bringing a wing person, wing woman, wing man. My only advice there is that you cannot stay with them the whole time. They're there to kind of help you get in and out when you need to. And then I would also say, look for the other lonely people in the room. That's one of my favorite things to do is you're at this big event and there's always one poor person sitting over there at a table, looking at their drink, looking at their phone, trying to look like maybe they're waiting for somebody. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to them, and just ask questions, just be curious. Don't make it formal. Don't have your business cards out and ready to go. Don't force it. Don't force it. And I think usually that with the preparation, wing person, looking for the other lonely people in the room. Because I think that's another thing too. A lot of networking books will be like, I think I quote this one in the book too. It talks about basically determining within 2 minutes of a conversation with the person whether or not they're worthy of you to keep talking to. And they're like, if they don't have the title, if they don't have the suit, if they don't have the the accolades, the title, whatever, walk away. Don't waste your time on those people. But what I have found is that some of the most amazing opportunities come from networking with the people that nobody else seems to be clamoring around. Great example is one of our members went to do a talk at a university about her startup business. It's an AI company. And while she was there, the kids were wowed by what she did. They loved it so much. One of the kids came up and he's like, oh, my dad's the president of such and such international bank. And I'm going to tell him about what you're doing. They're about to close a contract, one of the biggest of their entire business career, because of a college student. You never know who you're talking to. So just be kind, be curious, be considerate. Everybody's worth having a little bit of a conversation with. You never know what you're going to learn.
So then for the organizers, what are some of the things that you recommend to help the people who may not be prone to loving networking?
I love this question so much. Be considerate. Remember that the people that are walking into the room, you want them to feel safe, seen, and heard. There's another great book. I'm all about the books. The Art of Gathering. And Preeti talks a lot about really curating and creating environments and spaces. And it's intentional in the sense of the lighting, the temperature, the music. And it's not just for hosting people at your house. It's when you try to bring people together, look at what you want the desired outcome to be, right? And from there, you can really set the stage and the scene for that desired outcome. So if your goal, like I said earlier, is connection and networking, why are you blaring music? Why are you filling people full of alcohol to the point that they can't even talk straight? It's not creating truly meaningful connections. And then even certain things, not that I'm knocking golf, I love a good game of golf, but it can be exclusionary. If you're not able-bodied, if you don't have the means and the finances, or if you don't have the disposable time on the weekends because you have a family to play 18 holes of golf. But yet some of the biggest business deals in the history of capitalism have been done on the golf course, but it's exclusionary. You don't have everybody present in the room. So think about that. Think about accessibility. Think about sound. Think about the dynamic of the space. I think one thing that's been really interesting to see is mocktails are such a thing, in advertising, that's how we got by, right? It was food and drink. And that never really felt comfortable for me. It fed my anxiety, especially as I got older. But I'm I still want to be out and feel special. So mocktails, yeah, it's great. You can enjoy something and still enjoy the company that you're with. Speed dating and speed networking, those are my pet peeves because it's just, again, it's how do we meet as many people as possible and get them in and out? That's not relationship building. The way we do it together digital is we actually look at who's attending and we create small peer groups. So we'll come together as one big group, but then we break out into smaller groups because we find the conversations get deeper even faster. And those who are more introverted just find it a lot easier to speak to a small group of 5 than a room of 50. And so to me too, a big thing is small rooms, big conversations. A lot of what we do within Together Digital, we keep it tight. We keep it small. I'm not trying to fill this community with 1 million women. The safety and security that we've created is because each of these women are quality women who want to, give and take in equal measure, that really are women that are for all women, no matter what their background, race, gender identity, history, age is. And that's not an easy thing to do when you're just like, come one, come all. And so I'm not saying you have to exclude. You just have to be more deliberate about making sure that you're truly creating that safe space for everyone.
When I was writing down some of the questions, I kind of wrote down that you're an empowerment leader.
No.
And when I was kind of looking through the thread line of what you have done, especially in recent history in your career, it kind of seems that everything has converged on that same topic of how do I empower people and help them be a better version of themselves, and or maybe a healthier version of themselves. And so when I hear about all the stuff that you've done, where you lead Together Digital, you're writing this book, and then now in just a few weeks, October 15th, you are launching the Marketer Collaborative, which is an incredible co-working space. But I feel like it outpours from your heart for people to know other people. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it's 8-year-old Amy. Like, I think that was one thing that was really cool, even in the midst of the depths of what felt like was despair of the pandemic and running a small mission-based business when like DEI is getting defunded and people's career development isn't being invested in. There was that moment, I was probably on another podcast talking, and it just struck me. I was like, oh, and I can't remember the question that they asked me, but I think maybe it was like something, what would you say to your younger self? And I was like, oh my gosh, my younger self would be so proud. 8-year-old Amy, this is exactly the thing she was already doing. And somehow between the ages of 13 and 35, I forgot, you know, and it just kind of kept coming back to those same things, those same topics. Because kind of once you find that, you just got to keep following it. And that's exactly what ended up happening with the Marketer Collaborative, you know, running a hybrid community of women that are across the globe now with Together Digital. I was starting to kind of miss that in person. My team was remote. You know, I loved working for my local coffee shop, but I had grown up in open working space agencies, a lot of collaboration, a lot of brainstorming, and I was really missing that. And so I started exploring options, maybe in franchising a co-working space, but that didn't quite feel right. And then I was introduced to Jim Price, who, you know, we kind of were always like, not ships in the night, but, you know, close but never close. We know a lot of the same people, but we had never met. And so when we met, we talked a lot about not the dissolving, but I don't really know, a less depressing way to say, but like really the way disbursement of agencies within Cincinnati. We used to have agencies that were a full block building that are now one floor of a building, or that like 5 agencies share one building or half a building. You know, a lot of us are going freelance, contract, independent. I think I heard recently that like over 40% of our industry is a gig economy, and it's projected to go up to 60%. And so those of us who aren't just going off and doing our own thing, a lot of us are still hybrid and remote. And, you know, one thing that I always loved about any place that I worked was the culture. It was always really important to me, no matter where I was, because of all the things you said before. And what I saw when I walked through this former agency space was just something waiting for that group, that those of us who are a little homeless right now, like we're still doing the work we love, but we're not in creative spaces anymore. We're in our basements or in our finished attics or at the library or at a coffee shop. And I just, you know, creativity cannot work in a vacuum. And running a business, you shouldn't also be working in a vacuum. And so when I walked around, I just sat down with Jim and I was like, yeah, I see, and I painted the picture for him, and he was like, let's do it. And I was so taken aback because I was like, I'm just going to throw it to the wall and see if it sticks. Like, I'm just going to pitch him. I had the logo, I had the brand, the vision, the mission. You know, I just was like, it was a weekend. It was a quiet weekend. I was like, I'm just going to crank this out because, again, gut. I'm like, I see it. I'm going to put it together. I'm going to put it in front of him. If he likes it, great. If he doesn't, I'm asking for the no. And instead I got, how much money do you need? And I was like, okay, cool, let's do this. And, you know, within 3-4 weeks, we were putting together an operations plan, a business plan. And it was just really cool to find a partner who, you know, can see the vision, but also has the space. And just as much as I do, wants to create that magic and that space for folks who maybe been lacking it. Because at the end of the day, you know, those heydays of agency, I think, are not totally gone, but they've definitely evolved and changed. And so that's what I love about the marketer. And while it's not just for marketers, being able to be in an environment and space, you know, that really is all about creativity and connection and collaboration, and is built for that. Like when you walk through the space, it's just so easy to see the intentionality that, again, intentional space creation. It's just begging for people to come and work and create and do. And I'm super excited to see what that's going to look like, because I think it's going to create also a lot of opportunity and a lot of business growth for folks who are just getting out there on their own or who have established themselves and are looking to grow.
That's so cool. And I think if I were to guess, but I'm curious, I would say this aligns with the vision of who you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I joke and say it's my unagency. It's the agency I've always wanted, because people have told me, you should run an agency. And I'm like, but the bureaucracy, the clients, the conglomerates that might come in to buy out, like there's just so much about it that felt heavy. And for me, you know, wherever I was always very passionate about the people and the work, but also the environment and the culture. So yes, you are right. It's like, I've been able to, and will continue to create that space in the internet, the internets, and, you know, in real life with Together Digital. But now it has a home at the marketer, which is really, really cool. Yeah.
Well, we're super excited. Obviously, being right down the street from you guys, it's going to be so exciting to see it come together. So I guess I want to ask the same question again. Based on the conversation that we just had, what would you say drives you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to like pin it down to any one thing. I just want to always follow what lights me up. And honestly, on any given day, it could be something different. You know, and it, you know, for the longest time, you know, being at home and working through and looking at the struggles and the issues of women in particular within this industry was what drove me. And then I think it's problem solving. Problem solving, I would say. When I see a pain point or a problem to solve, I love the idea of finding a creative way to solve it. And so that came through when I was a kid trying to save the planet, when I was making logos for candy jars, you know, when I was creating branding for, you know, some of the world's biggest brands. That was the fun part of it. It was like, I actually get to have fun solving problems and helping people. So yeah, I'm not doing surgery. I'm not saving lives by any means, even though we like to think we are. Yeah, that brings a lot of joy. And then also just, again, bringing people together. It's just, I did a talk a couple years back talking about the loneliness epidemic. And this started before COVID, right? Before we were in isolation for 2 years? And it talks a lot about how Gen Z is being dubbed the loneliest generation. Like the Surgeon General actually put out research that says perceived isolation, so feeling like the only person in the room, even in a crowded room, perceived isolation over the course of your life can be the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and can shorten your life by up to 15 years. And so in a world that's becoming more transactional and less about connection and community and multi-generational families, we're just getting lonelier and lonelier. And so for me, what I'm hoping we'll see over these next few years is really the opposite of what we've been seeing, which is a lot of polarization, a lot of everything is touchless, you know, and you know, all that, coming back to, you know, where we started as a species, which is all about community. It's all about connection, because that is how we're hardwired. Like you can't, you know, you don't touch a baby and it really impacts them for the rest of their entire lives, right? I think there was a whole like YouTube thing online where a guy tried to isolate for like 45 days without any human contact and nearly lost his mind. Like it's just, we're not built for that. And I think we are starting to realize that. And so I hope that we can continue to find ways to be more intentional about how we come together, and, you know, other people will take that opportunity to do the same thing, whether it's just neighbors in your backyard, you're talking to neighbors, which is a crazy idea. Or, you know, building and creating things that will allow for that, because then you get to sit back and watch it happen. And that's like the best part.
Man, Amy, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. If somebody wants to try and get connected with you, how would they do it?
LinkedIn's probably the best way. Love or hate it. I get it. Some people are on it. Some people aren't. LinkedIn, you can find me there and connect. Like I'll always, tell me you've heard me on the show, and I'm always happy to connect and help any way I can. Together Digital, you can go to togetherindigital.com for the website, and then the Marketer Collab to learn more about the Marketer Collaborative.
Awesome. We wish you all the success with your upcoming launch. We cannot wait.
Me too.
But thank you so much. This has been great.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening to the Cincinnati Business Podcast. If you like the show, the best way to support us is to like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you fantastic content just like this. And if you are a greater Cincinnati-based business owner who has something you want to share with the world, reach out to me at brian@cincinnatipodcaststudio.com.